Hey everyone, Cole Flora here. Today we're going to be talking about some fuel system troubleshooting. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is a wiring schematic for the vehicle that we're going to be working on today. And we're going to be talking about how the fuel pump gets its power, where it's grounded at, and the relays and fuses that also are working with that. So if we take a look at our first picture, we can see that we are getting constant power to the fuel pump relay coming from the underhood fuse block. And when this relay is powered coming from the PCM, it closes the switch shut and allows power to run down to the fuel pump. And then the fuel pump is then grounded out to a splice pack on the left side of the engine compartment. So that's basically how your fuel pump is wired. If you suspect that your fuel pump has gone bad, one of the easiest tests that you can do would be an initial fuel pump operational check. Basically, you're just going to turn your key to the on position without cranking the vehicle, and you're going to listen to see if you can hear the fuel pump in the gas tank going. Another test to consider while fuel system troubleshooting would be a bench test on the fuel pump relay. So basically what we are going to do is we are going to hook up a jumper cable from pins 86 to power and 85 to ground on the battery. This is going to energize the coil, which is going to force shut the switch. If we hear a click, this means that the relay is functioning properly. This, however, does not mean that the relay is a good relay. Another test we can do then is test the voltage drop across the relay contact switch. So with our jumper wires hooked up to pins 86 to power, 85 to ground, and the switch shut, we can hook up a digital voltmeter and put it in volts and basically read what the voltage drop is across the switch through the voltmeter. So as you can see here, this is what we're doing, and we are losing very little to, if anything at all, across the switch, meaning that this is a good fuel pump relay. Alright folks, today we are taking a look at a fuel pump that is out of the tank, and we are going to be checking the fuel sending unit for operation. So basically what we've done here is we've taken our digital multimeter and we've hooked it up in the connector that runs the wires down to the sending unit. So how this sending unit works is as you fill up your fuel tank, this float right here will lift up. As you lift up, you'll notice that the ohms of resistance drops, and that sends a signal to your car that tells you your fuel level. That's basically how you check the operation of a fuel sending unit. One way to test to see if your fuel pump is getting power to the harness would be to backpin the positive wire that carries the power to the fuel pump, and then hook up your digital multimeter in the volt setting. Place your black lead on a known good ground, and then take your red lead and hook it to the pin that you use to back probe the power. Cycle the key to the on position to see if you are getting any voltage to the wire. Each injector has power coming from the underhood fuse block, which is hot in run or start. Each individual injector then also has a ground wire coming off running to the PCM. So the PCM sends the signal by grounding each individual injector, which causes the injector to spray, meaning it's a ground controlled injector circuit. So the next test that we're going to be conducting, we're going to be doing an injector sound test. Basically what this does, you're just going to use a stethoscope and put it on the injector and have someone crank the car for you while you are listening, and you should be able to hear the injector. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the stethoscope on. We're going to put this right down on the injector. Go ahead, Pat. And you can hear the injector ticking, which means that it is functioning properly. Next test we're going to be doing, we're going to be using a Noid light, and we are going to disconnect the harness at the injector and put our Noid light in the harness. And when we start the car, it's going to pulsate, resembling the pulses of the injector. Go ahead and start it. As you can see, the Noid light is pulsing pretty steady, which means that injector is getting steady pulsing. Next test that we're going to be doing is we are going to be checking for the voltage at each injector. So what we've done is we have backpinned the 2 wires on the injector harness and ran the leads to the multimeter and have it set in volts. So when the car is cranked, we should see how much voltage that injector is getting. Go ahead and crank it. So as you can see, it jumped up to about 65 hundredths of a volt, and that's how much voltage that injector is getting. The next test that we're going to be doing, we are going to be checking the resistance of the injector. So basically what we've done here is we have just unhooked the harness from the injector, and what we did is we took our 2 alligator clips and hook those up to the 2 pins that are down on the injector. And if you come over here, you can see that the resistance of this individual injector is about 0.3 ohms. Next test we're going to be doing is a power balance test on the injectors. So we have our injector tester here with our fuel pressure gauge hooked up. We cycled the key to build up fuel pressure in the fuel rail, so we're sitting at about 52 psi right now. Like I said, the tester is hooked directly up to the injector, so once we hit this button, it is going to engage the injector and pulse it, and then we are going to take note of how much psi it dropped. So we're going to go ahead and start the test, and you can hear the injector pulsing, and then we'll come over here and look at our fuel pressure gauge, and it's reading at about somewhere around 18 psi now. For our next test, we are going to be just looking at the fuel pressure. So basically what we have here, we have our gauge, and with our gauge we have it hooked up to a T connector. This is so that way we can run one end directly to the fuel rail and have our other end hooked up to the feed line for the fuel. And when we go ahead and turn on the car, we're going to be able to read exactly how much fuel pressure we are getting at that fuel rail. So go ahead and start it. As you can see here, we're sitting at about 55 psi of fuel getting to your fuel rail.